This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Public speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The chair will call upon public speakers at the appropriate time. Each public speaker is requested to state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Public speakers who wish to speak in person should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Public speakers participating by Zoom who are wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of any written correspondence would like to speak during the meeting, they should raise their hand or submit a public speaker card. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Emily, could you please conduct roll call?
Member Ash. Here. Member Bankert.
Present.
Member Carr.
Here.
Member Erickson.
Here.
Member Everidge. Here. Member Miller.
Present.
Member Saunders.
Here.
Member Shakarian.
Here.
Member Stark.
Here.
Member Wayne.
Here.
Vice Chair Essel-Sego.
Present.
And Chair Lovejoy.
Present.
All right, we do have a quorum with members Esquivel, James, Patel, and Vedantam absent.
And we have a new member that I would like to welcome, Miss Andrea Everidge from Oakley. Would you like to provide a brief introduction to yourself?
Andrea Everidge. Again, I'm from Oakley. I work in Oakland. I work for a law firm in Oakland, and I'm thrilled to be here. Looking forward to learning from each of you and how I can serve East County.
Well, we all wish you a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that's not part of the agenda? If so, please submit a public speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and staff and I will call on you. Emily, have we received any written public comment?
We have no public comments.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which includes the summary of actions from October 22nd, 2025 meeting and the acknowledgement of the member attendance log. Are there any changes or comments from the committee?
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay, Emily, have we received any written or remote public comment?
We have no written or remote public comments.
Okay, so I have a first motion by Member Ash and a second by Member Miller. Emily, could you please conduct a roll call?
Member Ash.
Aye.
Member Bankert.
Abstain.
Member Carr.
Aye.
Member Erickson.
Aye.
Member Everidge.
Abstain.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Saunders.
Aye.
Member Shakarian.
Aye.
Member Stark.
Aye.
Member Wayne.
Abstain.
Vice Chair Essel-Sego.
Aye.
Chair Lovejoy.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously with members Bankert, Everidge, and Wayne abstaining, and members Esquivel, James, Patel, and Vedantam absent.
Okay, we will now move to the regular agenda items, of which we have two. The first item is an action item that will be, I don't believe we have Mr. Kelly here tonight. Will it be presented by Ms. Johnson? Okay, and then presented by Patrick Golier.
Mr. Kelly is here, excuse me, sorry. He's joining
online.
us virtually, thank you.
Hello, welcome, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Lovejoy. Sorry I can't be there in person. I've got a cough drop in my mouth right now, so to keep from spreading germs around, so I thought I'd save you all from that. So anyway, Matt Kelly, Director of Planning for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. I'd like to introduce our only checklist of the evening for our new member. Well, I certainly can't explain the checklist in a brief introduction, but I'll try to. The Growth Management Program checklist is something that every jurisdiction in the county, all 19 jurisdictions and the county, are required to submit every 2 years in order to receive their return to source funds from Measure J, 18%, and in some cases, an additional 2% of Measure J revenues go back to the cities. And the way they get that is by submitting this checklist, which demonstrates by the 12 items on the checklist that they are in compliance with the growth management program. In the spring, we'll do a whole presentation on the growth management program and the checklist and what you should be looking for when you're reviewing them. But I'll just let Lafayette present, and then you can kind of see what a checklist looks like and what the contents are. So today from the city of Lafayette, we have Patrick Gollier, who's the Transportation Program Manager for the city, as well as Greg Wolf, who is the Planning Director for the city. And looks like they're getting ready. And sharing screen. I will hand it over to Patrick if he's ready.
Great. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to the CAC for taking the time to review Lafayette's compliance, Measure J compliance with the Growth Management Program. My name is Patrick Gollier. I'm the Transportation Program Manager at the City of Lafayette, and I'm joined here by Greg Wolf, the Planning and Building Director at the city. And Greg is going to be helping to kick things off with a review of our housing and land use development.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, everyone, and I'm happy to entertain questions at any point. So looking back at calendar years 2022 and 2023, which are an eon ago, but I'm happy to give you information on those. And I'll report out and speak to three kind of different categories of housing projects. When they come in, they've applied, they get entitled, then they apply for building permits, and then they get a final inspection or certificate of occupancy. And so those are kind of the three bins that the state requires us to report annually on, and that I'll cover in tonight's presentation. So in 2022, there were 67 dwelling units approved through the entitlement process, and amazingly, 56 of those were accessory dwelling units. So this was still kind of during the pandemic, and we had seen a significant uptick in applications for accessory dwelling units during the pandemic, both from people were hunkering down and sheltering and realizing they wanted to have a little bit of space, perhaps from some family members, but also changes in state law like that began in around 2017 were finally coming into implementation by the general public a lot more. So I have a slide on accessory dwelling unit applications over time later on in the presentation. In 2023, 45 units approved. Both of these are kind of low years, understandably, during the pandemic and the global supply chain challenges. So on the right hand, you'll see the table with respect to the breakdown of building permits that were issued and how the majority of the units are either moderate or above moderate, and I think all jurisdictions struggle with getting very low income and low income projects entitled. The city is embarking on a fully affordable project now, but it's not in calendar years 22 and 23. So if you're interested, we have a major projects page on our website, lovelafayette.org/major projects, and you can find out more information on any of the projects that I'll speak to tonight, and any other kind of major projects over 5 units. We post them on our website and update it periodically. So entitled housing projects during the 2 reportable years this evening. Again, I mentioned that we got an influx of accessory dwelling unit applications. These applications were for converting 8 carports into 8 accessory dwelling units at an existing apartment building. You'll see this slide again, I think, later on in the completed, got occupancy of those units. We re-entitled 12 new townhomes, and we do have a inclusionary housing ordinance which requires 15% of the units historically in the downtown to be below market rate. Now that is actually citywide through a recent change. And in terms of transportation work, they were required to do sidewalk improvements at the north end of the street where I think there is a school, daycare as a neighbor. 3458 Mount Diablo Boulevard, we entitled 9 new townhomes there. They're 3 stories, 16 parking spaces overall, so little less than 2. This project is not going to be built. Rather, a new property owner has come back and is seeking currently entitlement for 30 condos here, so significantly greater number. 950 Huff Avenue is a 4-story, 20-unit condo project. Later on, I think you'll see 45 or 46 parking spaces through the use of puzzle stackers. And part of the project at the rear of the lot, it's along a creek, and so we now have an easement to connect pedestrians in a future condition along the creek at the rear. Yes? It's not just direct up and down stacker. It actually has lateral movement as well. So we're into projects that are under construction, and this is very, very near completion. It began several years ago, 66 condos, 3 stories. If you haven't seen it, and it's, I think, a well-designed building, fits its location quite well. Bottom right of the screen is the corner, catty corner to Trader Joe's, and will be a brew pub with brewing equipment and eats. And they completed the first phase of the aqueduct pathway as well. So project by project, that's being implemented. Woodbury Highlands also constructed the aqueduct pathway, and this was a 99-unit project up on the hill above the Woodbury, and so this is finishing its final building right now. So selling out to, and again, 15% of the units were below market rate. 950 Huff, you saw it entitled. It's also now under construction, and it does have the 45 parking spaces as mentioned. Not under construction, but I did want to throw in the slide. Previously, the board was made aware and discussed the Terraces of Lafayette. It's at the northwest corner of Stanley, Deer Hill, and Pleasant Hill. I apologize, southwest corner. And it is 315 apartments. There are 3-story buildings, 14 buildings, and they are fulfilling conditions of approval and mitigation measures pursuant to the EIR, and will begin construction in the spring, slated for April. And turning to projects that were completed in the reportable years, those 8 carports into ADUs. 210 Lafayette Circle, which is a 12-unit condo project almost across the street from the 950 Huff project. So in the center of town. We're seeing redevelopment of even small lots. This is less than half an acre. And again, two units or 15% are below market rate. And the mill at Brown Avenue, which is on the east end of town, but right on the boulevard at Mount Diablo Boulevard and Brown, 13 townhome project. And here's the slide on accessory dwelling units. So you saw early in the pandemic, it was climbing, dropped off a little bit as interest rates spiked and ramifications from the supply chain, I think, as well. But we're around 40 plus every year, and they're, I think, going to be climbing slowly over time. To that end, we have an accessory dwelling unit accelerator program, and it essentially is kind of three-pronged. We have, as part of our housing element, committed to reducing the city's impact fees by 50% for at least the first half of the cycle, and we'll probably continue that afterwards. That's my suspicion. Senate District 7, Senator Glazer had sponsored a district-wide program to provide funding to accelerate accessory dwelling units. And so our program is providing up to $15,000 for the construction of a new ADU. And they have to get it entitled, build it, and finish it essentially by the end of next year. And permit-ready ADUs we'll be liaising, working with our neighbors in Moraga and Orinda to try to have permit-ready plans that people could just take off the website and say, I want to build it, please give me a permit and pay for the permit. Turning to the housing element, we started in early 2020 in January with our General Plan Advisory Committee, and the City Council readopted the housing element update. It had previously done so in 23, readopted it in 24 as HCD required changes, and HCD certified it just earlier this year in March, the end of March this year. So we submitted to HCD 5 times, and we're certified, and our RHNA allocation has the city growing more than 20% in 8 years. If you're interested, opportunity sites are primarily downtown. And outside of the downtown, on the left of the screen, is about 10 acres of undeveloped property across the street from Oakwood Athletic. That's now been upzoned to 35 dwelling units per acre. The Terraces of Lafayette is the blue parcel in the upper right. And the next slide kind of delineates the areas which were significantly upzoned. So north of the boulevard, south of the freeway, those properties, those zones are now 60 dwelling units per acre, formerly 35 dwelling units per acre.
Are these allocations pre or considered to be pre or post density bonus? It sounds like post with a 60.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay, all right.
HCD requires us to demonstrate opportunity sites which meet specific criteria and estimate the realistic capacity and production on those. Ours was 88% of what it's zoned for, even though all the projects over the last 10 years have come in and averaged 111% of zoned density using state density bonus law. And with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Back to me. I'll shift things to a discussion of the variety of transportation projects and programs that Lafayette's initiated and implemented over the past few years. I did want to mention first that our city council adopted Vision Zero in 2021. And this led to a shift in priority in recent years towards safety, projects involving safety, particularly for active transportation users. So our focus has not only been on staying the course in our street maintenance program, but also incorporating more complete streets elements into our capital projects. And you'll see that as I go through the projects that have been initiated. So this is just a quick summary of the transportation projects and programs that I'll discuss tonight. First, we conducted a number of road resurfacing projects, as well as surface seal projects, contributed towards our 76 PCI rating this year. These roadways include segments of major arterials like our Olympic Boulevard and Glenside Drive, but also a large number of residential streets that were included in our surface seal projects. We included a broad mixture of funding sources to help fund the pavement rehab projects. We also used Measure J funding with other funding sources on capital projects that improve safety and comfort for pedestrians and cyclists across Lafayette, consistent with direction received by our council, but also the La Miranda Action Plan. And finally, Lafayette initiated and has completed a number of projects using non-Measure J funds, and I'll briefly discuss those as well. So I mentioned we've been prioritizing improvements along our pedestrian network. And in 2023, we initiated a pathway project on segments of 3 streets that provide access to Spring Hill Elementary School. So this includes Release Valley Road, the west side of Pleasant Hill Road from Release Valley Road to Spring Hill Road, and Quant Road. So all of those kind of surround the school. These are photos of Release Valley Road. The nice asphalt pathway on the right was removed and reconstructed with this fence. We also included ADA improvements. You can see the curb ramp on the right. Pleasant Hill Road, our narrow pathway was removed and we installed a new wide, 6-foot wide pathway. It was constructed with this guardrail that protects pedestrians from vehicles on southbound Pleasant Hill Road. The guardrail replaced an old chain link fence that had been there in past years. On the right, you see a new ADA ramp at the Pleasant Hill Road and Spring Hill intersection. Quant Road, similar type project. We replaced an old, narrow, cracking, failing pathway with a new 5-foot wide asphalt pathway with a berm separating the pathway from vehicle lanes. We included new curb ramps and drainage inlets. So this project has really helped to greatly expand safe and comfortable pedestrian access to and from the school, providing access for quite a few houses in the northeast segment of our city. The next project, the BART Town Center Pathway and Bike Station project. In 2022, we reinitiated this project. This is a joint project between Lafayette and BART. The work that was involved was initiating the PS&E, 100% PS&E design package for the project. The project is using Measure J and a number of other fund sources. The intent of this project is to increase safe access for pedestrians and cyclists between the station, to and from the station. Also encourage alternate modes of transportation to and from the BART station, but also in and around our downtown, and also to create a welcoming entry to the downtown. The primary components of the project are an ADA compliant Class 1 pathway segment that will be constructed between the station and the existing town center pathway segment that touches our downtown core. We'll also be building a new public plaza to serve as a community gathering space, safe pedestrian-oriented transition between the pathway and the station. And we've got an art installation as well that'll be installed. And BART will be installing a new secure bike station at the station south entrance with space for up to 60 cyclists or 60 bikes. This project went out to bid recently and will be starting construction in early 2026, weather dependent. The next project, now I'm starting to review projects that our staff worked on during 2022 and 3 using non-Measure J funds. In 2023, we implemented a number of quick build safety measures in and around our Olympic Boulevard roundabout. We did this alongside the Olympic Boulevard paving project. So the Quick Build project was intended to address concerns that we've been hearing over the years from pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers about safety in and around the roundabout. And of course, the roundabout location is proximate to two Class 1 facilities along Pleasant Hill Road, but also the entrance to the Lafayette Moraga Trail. So there is quite a bit of ped and bike activity in this area. So the Quick Build projects includes lane narrowing. We reduced the number of vehicle lanes on southbound Pleasant Hill Road in the approach to the roundabout. We reduced the length of the right turn slip lanes. And we installed these trial modifications with temporary materials, signage, paint, and posts. And we evaluated them over the course of 2023 and 2024. And ultimately, most of them were built as permanent measures in 2024 as part of our surface seal program. Here's just
Can I ask a quick question on that one back?
sure.
I'm sorry. Are you guys looking at doing any more improvements? Because I bike through there a lot.
Yep.
And it's still pretty unsafe, just as a bicyclist, especially going from Walnut Creek towards Lafayette, that entranceway. So I'm just, but this is, I know you did a Quick Build. Are there any other
And
planned
we built out
improvements?
we built out
Okay.
many of them, but the only project we've got upcoming are rapid flashing beacons on that east leg. So the Saranap side of the roundabout. This is just a couple before and after photos of southbound Pleasant Hill Road at the approach to the roundabout. So the photo on the left represents the Quick Build lane drop that we installed and evaluated using paint posts and signs. And then in 2024, you see the build out on the right. This was meant to reduce speeds on southbound Pleasant Hill Road, and it worked. We also piloted a shorter right turn pocket lane. Again, this is an example on Pleasant Hill Road with a bike merge zone. And you can see the temporary treatment on the right and the permanent measure on the left and permanent on the right. Greg mentioned the Lafayette Aqueduct Pathway Project. This represents a long-term vision for Lafayette to construct a multi-use Class 1 pathway along the east-west East Bay Mud right-of-way from approximately the Lafayette Reservoir all the way to Pleasant Hill Road and beyond. Ultimately, it could get into Walnut Creek. So this is a crude map showing the approximate alignment within our downtown area of the pathway. The dark segment is the completed segment that Greg mentioned. So this is the portions of the pathway that have been completed. And in 2023, this segment was completed by the Brand Housing Development that constructed it as part of their off-site requirements. It's a beautiful path. Here's a few photos. This is in front of the Woodbury Highlands complex that Greg also mentioned. And then the photo on the left shows the newest segment of pathway close to Dolores Drive, and then the new crossing treatments across Dolores Drive on the right, with the unfinished portion you can see beyond that. So today, Lafayette has initiated 100% PS&E designs for the remainder of the pathway to Pleasant Hill Road. And we are being recommended for STIP funding that will allow us to construct the segment between Dolores, here on the right, to the BART station. So that's exciting. This project is moving. Finally, in 2021, Lafayette initiated a number of schools, rapid implementation school safety plans for every school in the city, all 7 schools. This effort involved the preparation of these plans that identified safety issues on the roadways surrounding our schools and recommended mitigations to address those issues. So council, subsequent to council's approval of these studies in 2022, they authorized about $1.3 million in local funds to design and construct a subset of prioritized safety improvements around the schools. And during 2022 and 2023, Lafayette constructed most of these safety projects. And I've got a few photos. Improvements include new crosswalks, curb ramps. The upper right shows a new sidewalk segment that was built, multiple RFBs. I think there were maybe 7 RFB crossings that we installed. The photo on the left here shows one of those RFBs, but also the channelizing island that was constructed to help slow traffic at this school crosswalk, and multiple speed humps across the city on some of the streets around our schools. We also initiated school zone speed limits around all of our schools, as well as installed a number of speed radar feedback signs on Pleasant Hill Road, adjacent to Acalanes High School and Spring Hill Elementary. So in terms of transportation policy alignment, here's just a few of the transportation programs aligned with the Measure J requirements. Measure J helps to fund about 60% of the La Miranda School Bus Program, and that serves over 1,100 students across Lafayette, Moraga, and Orinda school districts. We also manage a pretty robust traffic calming program that was revamped in 2023. But it remains a resident-driven, application-based program that addresses speeding on our local and collector roads. In 2023, council adopted our local road safety plan. So this has been a great blueprint for addressing safety into the future. I mentioned that we implemented school zone speed limits, but in 2023, we also updated our engineering and traffic survey study. And through that study, we were able to reduce speed limits by 5 miles an hour on 12 roadway segments throughout Lafayette. And finally, led by CCTA, the 3 La Miranda jurisdictions are working together on the smart signals projects that's being implemented countywide. And this is our final slide. This just demonstrates our formal efforts to collaborate with our jurisdictional partners. Our Mayor, Susan Kendall, and Lafayette staff, me, work collaboratively with our regional partners in SWAT at the southern portion of the county. We also work closely with our La Miranda partners in the La Miranda Program Management Committee, or LPMC, and the La Miranda Fee and Financing Authority, or LFFA. So those 2 committees represent multi-jurisdictional efforts to collectively and collaboratively plan for transportation programs and projects that impact La Miranda, as well as ensuring that new growth pays for the facilities required to meet the demand of that growth. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll ask the committee for questions, comments. Member Ash?
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. On the housing side, you guys have a lot of flat, stretching BART parking lots. Has there been any conversations with BART about those developments?
Yes. Going back at least 3 or 4 years, engaging with BART. So when we initiated the housing element update, we conducted a survey. We worked with a firm called Balancing Act, which generally does budgets and engages people online where they would allocate money and how they would get to kind of net neutral budget or have a credit. So they worked with us. We were the pilot to use it in land use and housing allocation. And so with a map, the community could kind of say, these are areas where we would like to have growth as opposed to other areas. And so the BART parking lots were the primary location, highest level of agreement around where housing should go, more density. And BART is not yet ready to redevelop the Lafayette station. So they have a transit-oriented communities and transit-oriented development work plan, and that is formulated and has a kind of timing associated with each of the anticipated timing for each of the stations. They're working on, El Cerrito and Berkeley and other stations, and so we were not able to include the BART parking lot in Lafayette in the 6th cycle. We're hoping to do that in the 7th cycle. And when I say cycle, it's a 8-year period for the planning for housing elements.
Okay, great. And then why you guys seem successful on the ADU side ADU side, getting people interested. You talked about your fast track permitting and making it easier. Just curious, your insight, why so many people are doing this. Is this because Lafayette has a lot of nice houses with bigger properties and it's working? What are you seeing as the trend or the uptick? Because those are good numbers.
Thank you. I think those are accurate kind of assessments, is that they can be done in any community and are. I think there's oftentimes means in Lafayette, and we're a suburban community where there is often space to put it in on the property, and so I think those two factors, along with how easy it is to do, we're finding a lot of multi-generational housing. So mom or dad coming back from a distant to live with the parents who have their kids in school in Lafayette. So a variety of reasons, but notwithstanding like the good numbers, it's still, construction costs are still high. And so we're trying to do what we can to ameliorate that.
And then there's, towards your 20% goal of expansion under this housing requirement, the city's involved in some like legal action to maybe get that dismissed based on fire code. Is that true? What do you know? What can you just share? I'm just curious, not.
Sure. We're not in any litigation regarding that aspect of it. So we did share feedback with MTC ABAG when the RENA allocation process that was being developed, and we advocated for consideration of topographic and risk factors, whether it's sea level rise, approximate to the bay, or very high fire hazard severity zones in the East Bay Hills. We felt like those were factors that should be considered when you're allocating the almost 500,000 units in the Bay Area. 3 counties created 80% of the jobs, and they're San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. But the housing allocation for the Bay Area is being distributed almost equally throughout, and that is a burden on the transportation systems.
Yeah.
So, we advocated for, proximity, jobs, housing balance. They did factor in kind of time of travel or proximity to transit and freeways. And so we just thought that natural hazards should be factored in. They did not factor them in.
Sure. No, that's just helpful to understand. And then Patrick, for you on the transportation side, just curious about curb management in Lafayette. Like, how's that working? I know there's a lot of cars in that sort of Mount Diablo downtownish corridor. Just kind of curious.
So right now, we have initiated a downtown parking management study. We're in the midst of that study. I've had a number of meetings with the business community. I've actually asked about curb management, and that's the one element of downtown that they claim is working okay in terms of deliveries. But we do want to think about the future and autonomous vehicles and how that might impact curb management as well. But for now, what we're hearing is that things are working okay from the business community.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'll stop asking 20 questions now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we can continue around the dais. Anybody, Member Wayne?
Sure.
If you'd like.
On your smart signal projects, what's your strategy and goals, and are you coordinating with the cities Walnut Creek and Orinda?
I am not directly working on the Smart Signals project. We've got smart engineers that are, but yes, we are. It is a countywide effort, and so we received La Marinda, the 3 jurisdictions, received 2 federal grants. The one is the one that the OBAG grant, and then we received a second federal grant for addressing additional signals in La Marinda. So we have 2 different projects that are kind of under the same umbrella. But yes, CCTA is leading that project, and yes, Walnut Creek is involved.
Yeah, on the multi-use paths with the district, the adequate, the path that goes along Bard Station, I believe it's west of the Lafayette Bard Station. Isn't there like a big drop off? How did you guys?
We're planning on bridges over the cross streets.
Oh, bridges, okay.
Yep, yeah.
Oh, cool, thanks.
Couple of simple questions for you. I was curious on how many parking spaces that you're losing with the Bart Town Center pathway
19.
development. 19, okay, ouch. And then was curious as to what feedback you got from the state when you made your case around your arena numbers, and then what you had submitted for projections. What did they come back with?
Our feedback was to MTC ABAG because they're the COG which is responsible for allocating the 471,000 units in the Bay Area. So we didn't have direct communication with the state on the RENA allocation. It is 5 times what our 5th cycle allocation was. So we were about 500 units allocated in the 5th cycle. We exceeded that in terms of actual production. We did not exceed that in the income allocation that the RENA numbers had. So yeah, we're now projected, I mean, we've been allocated 5 times. So 2,114 units in the 8 years, and we're required to have a buffer built into that. So I just looked, and our pipeline projects, so projects that have been entitled, are pre-construction or under construction, total 780 units. And so we worked to identify an additional 56 different sites, I think is the rough number, in the community that have the potential to be built out with housing, and we made projections there. So we have above a 30% buffer built into our opportunity sites calculation, because we recognize that not all sites will develop with as much affordable housing as we hope.
Do you think there was some punishment for early success with having some big numbers coming into the review?
I think Lafayette was treated the same as other communities with similar, with transit. So we're close to BART, we're close to the freeway. We are a high resource area, so that was a factor as well. There was a modifier to the numbers. And so most communities are allocated growth of about 20% in 8 years. We're a tick or a few ticks higher because of what I mentioned, but I don't think we were treated like unfairly compared to any other community.
It's impressive what you've done there. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a question on all these housing developments that you listed. Since there's going to be a number of them, some of them larger, some smaller, but now with the state's mandates, you know, the SB, I think it's AB 130, basically developers are not going to do much about traffic impacts. Has any of these larger developments, have you required traffic impacts? Do they perform, do they conduct traffic studies, come up with mitigations, or basically because of the mandates, city's hands are tied these days. You cannot ask for much more than what the minimum requirements are, which is the VMT analysis.
So I would say that the Terraces of Lafayette project is the project kind of most recently where significant transportation intersection improvements, a new trap lane is to facilitate throughput on the, and ped bike improvements. So that was kind of the most recent significant one entitled 5 years ago. AB 130 is relatively new, so we're not seeing kind of the impacts of that yet, but other state laws over the last 3 to 5 years have allowed infill development, and the infill projects have been, you know, small enough where they would not really trigger a lot in terms of it beyond off-site improvements under a kind of historic TIA. We do require TIAs to traffic impact analysis to be part of the submittal so that we're assured that the kind of ins and outs, ingress, egress, are adequately accommodated. A lot of them, you know, demonstrate that and functionally are screened out by AB 740 or GHG, Air Quality District, and CCTA screening standards. So we're getting a lot of redevelopment within half a mile of BART as well. We are finding that projects are still building parking even though they are not required to.
Okay, thank you.
So my name's Chris. I live in Moraga, so I'm just interested in kind of whether you think the different things that are ahead of us are going to solve some of the Moraga Road, you know, problems. I mean, when school's coming in and out, I mean, that backs all the way up to the top of the hill. So does some of the light things and some of the other things you're working on, do you see kind of some light at the end of the tunnel? I don't think you'll ever fix it totally, but.
Moraga Road is a challenge for us. We hear more about the Moraga Road and Mount Diablo intersection than anything else, and probably everything else combined. It's a challenge for us. That we're hoping that the Smart Signals projects will allow us to be more responsive to incidents that happen, but then also just to big peaks. One thing that we believe will happen is that we'll be able to make changes remotely and quickly rather than the more manual process that happens today. There are a lot of demands for travel on Moraga Road for sure.
And will the Smart Signals kind of alleviate an evacuation? Is that the intent, or does that maybe not do that?
I believe yes, and I also believe that that's going to be considered as part of CCTA's evacuation study that they're kicking off next year, I believe.
Okay, all right. It is a problem for sure. Thank you.
Hi, Ed Miller, Clayton. I have a few questions I wrote down. I'll make them very quick. By the way, can you tell me who are the members of the, not the names of the people, but how is the La Miranda Program Management Committee comprised? Are they appointed by the city council, or who is this?
Yes, it's elected officials from one elected official from each of the 3 La Miranda jurisdictions.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So it's like SWAT, but not in
Yes,
transportation,
exactly.
in the legislative side. Got it. The city council. On the 1.3 million spent on plans and construction for the school safety plans, did you, I'm sorry, not for that specifically, for the Spring Hill improvements that you made, did you have to reduce the roadway, or did you dig into the setbacks to expand a little bit?
Dug into the setbacks.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Quick, that was a nice, easy yes, no. Now, on that ADU conversion that involved the 8 units that eliminated the parking spaces for that, I apologize, but I'm just curious, how was any sort of parking offset offered, or any kind of accommodation, mitigation offered by the person doing that?
No. State law allow,
Yeah, no, I'm familiar, and it only gets more aggressive every year. Like last year, that got very punitive on the, you will not consider parking as in your factors, yes. I just wondered if they had attempted to do something. I was honestly shocked when you said that most of the groups that are out there, although not strictly required by the state law to consider parking impact, have included adequate parking based on standard, measures.
correct, they have, because they feel to adequately sell the units, the market is demanding to have parking, because we are a suburban community, notwithstanding the fact that transit is proximate. A concern on the provision of parking is that the TOC, the Transit-Oriented Communities policy that MTCA-BAG is rolling out, requires jurisdictions to cap parking at one space, like to. So
It's
that
normally 1.2 or 1.3, or maybe it's even 1.6.
a
per
maximum
unit.
of one space. So
Oh,
even
I'm
if
just saying
a develop-
historically, when some of that budgeting is done, when you're looking at an apartment complex or whatever, I'm just saying historically, we've used different factors. I hear what you're saying,
Correct.
they are capping it at, yes.
Yeah, so even if a developer wanted to do 1.2, they theoretically could not, because it would have to be prohibited.
Wow, there's gonna be long-term negative impacts that they're gonna have to then deal with as a result of that. All right, I think I got through all of my stuff, and I do appreciate your candor and answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. That's wonderful. I want to touch on the ADUs. So from the report and from your presentation, it appears majority of the housing progress now is through ADUs. And I guess my question is that, does this risk impacting RENA obligations for lower income categories, considering that ADUs are not deed restricted?
They can be.
Yes. So what you saw in the numbers on the early slide was that a large percentage in 2022 were ADUs. It's not the norm. I mean, I think that we're getting 30 to 40 a year, but we have kind of spikes and it ebbs and flows in terms of development applications for multifamily projects. So I mentioned the 780 units in the pipeline. None of those are ADUs. They're all bigger, more significant projects, 70, 315, 99, 100. So whether it is ADUs, which are frankly more affordable just by their nature, or the multifamily projects, both are not producing in the very low income or low income enough to meet the RENA allocation. So there's much greater demand out there and much higher numbers that were allocated than is realistically possible to produce. So there must be other ways towards trying to achieve those. And one of our ways is where we are donating a site in the downtown owned by the city. Currently, it's a gravel parking lot. It's 949 Moraga Road. Saha and Sunflower Hill are going to be building a 48-unit, fully affordable, deeply affordable project for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But that's a lot of work to do, even just like a 48-unit project in the downtown. So the short answer to your question is yes. Any type of housing that is built is, our experience, not going to achieve the numbers fully of the RENA allocation.
Okay, thank you. And also to follow up on that, have you all anticipated any challenges to your urban limit line, considering the housing pressures?
No concerns around the urban limit line. It is, our focus for housing growth is in the downtown, close to goods and services and transit, walkability, bikeability, and no concerns about the urban limit line.
Okay, thank you. Last question, it's on the MOE. I was just trying to understand some of those numbers. So it looks like, well, I guess I'm trying to understand where is the funding source coming from? So you had 527 kind of allocated, but your fiscal year 22 was about, what was it, 4.3 million? 4.4 really. And then fiscal year 23 was 2.3 million, if I'm rounding up properly. So I'm trying to understand how that's working in terms of numbers-wise, how, like, was there like a backlog that you had to, like pull in funds from elsewhere to take care of backlog projects?
We have a lot of other funding sources, gas tax, our general fund, number of other fund sources as well. But yes, I mean, during the pandemic, things did slow down, and so there was a backlog, 2022.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's what I was thinking. I
Okay.
just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Mhm.
We've spoken a lot about ADUs. We've kind of danced around it, but you kind of spoke earlier about capturing like who is in the ADUs, and I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to the statistics. You mentioned that their grandparents are moving in. Are they being used as secondary office space and that kind of thing, or rentals? That's what I'm getting at. How you're capturing that and where it stands.
Great question, and I would love to have definitive data around that. I think every possibility that you mentioned is happening. And we have very limited ways to require submission of such data. But we are, to the degree that we can, if before that they get their permit or final inspection, we're requiring kind of information about it. And that information may change the day after they get their final inspection, but, and we're also trying to tease out for the applications that come in and you get entitled for the projects that aren't being built. Why are they not being built? What are the factors that, so it's very difficult to tease these out. I have made a series of just phone calls to people to try to glean such. So I think truthfully, all of it. I know many instances they are being rented out. Many instances it is a parent or a child that has come back to the community that they grew up in, and after attending college or what have you. So I don't have great statistics on it, but it may be something that like ABAG MTC or the Turner Center can provide with a bigger data set that they could have some meaningful results.
Yeah, gotcha. That might be something to look at in the future as as the multi-generation, that population is growing, but it's something you have a little bit more control on of the permitting process, and also looking to incent lower rental housing, and maybe disincent Airbnbs and that kind of thing might be something to look into. It looks like you had something you were going to respond to there.
Just that our attempts to gather this information as part of our housing element and general plan update, we did a survey of accessory dwelling unit applicants and just got a very poor response rate. So I think it's more about engaging people at the counter when we're talking to them.
Absolutely. And then question on the transportation side, I was wondering if you had any statistics on the safety impacts of the projects that you've implemented, and also whether there's been increased bike and ped activity on those beautiful bike paths.
Luckily, Lafayette's in a good spot because we have very low numbers of fatal and serious injury collisions. So we're starting with a very low number, but those school safety improvements, that was prompted by the fatality of a crossing guard in 2021. So there was just a swell of support for the city to do something and build projects around the city at the schools to make it safer. We're not done, but we have completed a large number of those projects, and just the feedback that we've been getting. I know you asked for statistics, but a lot of it is just what we're hearing from parents and from principals and the school district, and it's all been very, very, very positive. There's still issues with pickup and drop off and safety related to that, and that's a harder nut to crack. But in terms of the engineering improvements that we put in, great feedback that we've gotten. There's, in terms of, I think you're asking for like numbers of pedestrians and cyclists, and so I don't have numbers of people who are walking and biking to school or walking and biking to BART. But you can see that the capital projects that we're building are all pretty intentional to try to promote mode shift.
And I'll contribute that I am intentionally watching the Aqueduct pathway because it's very near our offices and my commute, and so I enjoy seeing people out there all the time now that those facilities have been built.
Yeah, those are wonderful. Also, shout out to CCTA's walk and roll program, which is probably going to be extended to Lafayette in the near future. So that might be another way to encourage the school population to use those beautiful new paths and the smart routes to school. So thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thanks so much. Very well done. Thought I had just one comment, but actually I'm going to follow up with a question on the subject we just had. For comment, I think Danville has 2 off-the-shelf ADU-approved designs, so I'm sure you're doing some kibitzing with other jurisdictions. I think Danville's had it for 2 or 3, 4 years now, so maybe some learning there possible.
You're absolutely correct. We have, and sadly, I'll report, there's not a high utility of those plans. What we're finding, or I guess rather what we're hearing, is that Danville found while those pre-approved plans did exist, most people want to have a little bit of a custom solution to fit their site and their circumstance. And so not as high utilization of those pre-approved plans as initially hoped. We're still going to put them out there, and whether we can just use the Danville set, and buy those from the architect who did them, or develop a La Marinda set, which is, I think, a little more likely. We still want to follow through on that.
Sounds like maybe, sounds like perhaps we should think about maybe there's some capacity, maybe AI can help tweak those and provide a standardization platform with customization or some such. If you crack that nut, let us know. Secondly, thanks for bringing up the tragedy of the security guard. If you look back on that, it clearly created a lot of incentive and action. Would that have happened without that tragic event taking place? Does it take that to really get that sort of impetus going?
That's hard to say. It's unlikely we'd get $1.3 million from our council. There certainly was a very, very concerted effort by school communities across Lafayette to improve conditions. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Just turning to look at the checklist here, just a comment, honestly, it was all filled out, looked good. But on the last page, it seemed like there may have been a typo or typos. It seems like there's duplicate words on the line, so I just wanted to point that out. But other than that, it looks good.
I'll check that out. I appreciate the comment. The last page of the.
Yeah, just where you fill out like the names and the signatures, it just seemed like the dates were filled out twice. So I was
okay.
just wanted to point that out, but.
There was confusion with the electronic signature, yeah.
Very nice.
Anyway.
That's it.
Hi, Andrea Everidge. I'm sure as a BART writer myself, and I don't spend a lot of time in the area there, La Miranda as a whole, and I'm sure you have some fantastic transportation models and data that you use to forecast, obviously, the traffic volumes. I'm just curious with development increasing, it sounds like you have some really phenomenal things going on there. And as there are bottlenecks, as I hear with traffic, what are the long-term plans for the first and the last mile connections to BART, if there are any?
There are great questions. So in terms of last mile to BART, the aqueduct pathway that we mentioned, that touches BART. So that actually will hit the south side of the station, and that will connect directly to the town center pathway project that's being built in 2026. So that will provide PED bike access directly to our downtown core. The aqueduct pathway, the intent is to actually go further east to Pleasant Hill Road, and we'll hit where the Terraces development is, the large development that Greg mentioned. This presentation was a snapshot of 2022 and 2023, but recently I've gotten a grant from MTC to initiate next year a BART access and circulation study. So that's going to take a look at a half mile around BART and take a look at the gaps in our pedestrian and cycle networks and come up with some recommendations to fill those gaps. Our council is also initiating, in light of the development that's anticipated downtown, a multimodal study for our downtown. And so the intent of that study will be to ensure that new residents and existing residents, their mode of choice is walking and biking in our downtown, particularly given the proximity of the new housing developments to BART, as well as our commercial, retail, schools, all the other land uses in our downtown.
I'm going to go back also to the application. So I was trying to look at some of the links because I saw that you're in the process of updating your, I think it was a 2040 bike pedestrian plan. And the link, I tried to go to the website, the Love Lafayette, which I do love Lafayette. I couldn't find the plan that was referring to. And I have understood is it going to be a little bit of delayed because I understand you guys are trying to do a much more in-depth survey of how you can make it Lafayette more walkable, more bikeable?
Yes, and I've also applied for grant funding to update our bike and ped master plans as well. So hopefully that comes through in 2026. So that would also be initiated next year.
And then so I have worked in Lafayette. I used to work at Burton Valley, and I have, we always go into Lafayette for a lot of shopping and for, bike shops and stuff like that. So have you found that, are you starting to see, because you guys have built much more multi-use housing than the other, like Orinda or Moraga, are you finding that that's changing, like bringing in a younger demographic that's starting to like support your schools? Are you finding that you're not projecting the population drop-off in students that some of the other like the local communities are? Are you seeing some of the benefits to the economy by having that multi-use housing?
I'll answer from my perspective. From transportation program manager, we have been getting a lot more input, a lot more requests for more urban-type bike and ped projects. So some of my colleagues who have been here for a lot longer in Lafayette than I have been have said that that's a huge sea change from the way things used to be a generation ago, where people wanted to maintain a semi-rural atmosphere. So I'm getting a lot, probably more requests for put in a sidewalk on my street. We want lighting, we want bike infrastructure. I want my kids to be able to walk to school. I've only been here for less than 5 years, but since the pandemic, but I'm understanding that's a huge change.
And thank you for doing that, because that's where I've been to many Orinda City Council meetings where it is that this is going to destroy our semi-rural village. And it's so lovely to have a community like Lafayette that's really looking at supporting multi-modalities and to get around and not have to drive everywhere.
Thanks.
Hi, may I ask a question? I know that's not traditional, but if it's all
Lindy, go
right.
ahead.
Lindy Johnson, I'm the Director of External Affairs here at CCTA, and I was just curious, because so much of my role is thinking about strategic communications and understanding how CCTA's programs are reaching our local jurisdictions. How well do you feel like you understand Walk and Roll, and how much about Walk and Roll has reached you in your role with the City of Lafayette? And it is totally okay if the answer is not at all. I'm just wanting to sort of understand that as you're thinking about safe routes to school and what that means in your community, whether programs like Walk and Roll have reached you.
That hasn't reached me.
Wonderful. No, that's good. That's
Honest.
really good to know, and a wonderful opportunity for us to better connect with folks like you in your roles. So that's really great. And I may have to ask as well, has this group gotten a presentation on Walk and Roll?
No, but yes, Member Miller had mentioned it in a previous meeting that it had gone to her.
Yeah, my daughter at Mount Diablo Elementary participates in it, and as a result of it, on Fridays, they are excited. Two of her girlfriends, we coordinate with the parents, and they carpool on those Fridays that they do the Walk and Roll, so they get their check-in or whatever.
Yeah, very cool.
They look forward to getting their charm when they get 4 check-ins or whatever for their.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really helpful for me.
Would this committee be interested in a presentation on street smarts or Walk and Roll?
Chair Lovejoy, we do actually have it on the future agenda items, update. We do every few years get an update from 511 Contra Costa on all their programs. So I am trying to get them in here once we have some room on one of these agendas.
Wonderful. So that looks like our round of questions is come to a completion. So thank you, Patrick and Greg, very much for your presentation and very thorough answering of all of our questions. Let me ask Emily if there's any written or public comments.
We have no written or remote public comments.
So do we have a motion to approve $576,309 in fiscal year local street and maintenance improvement funds for the City of Lafayette?
In the spirit of cooperating and collaborating on Moraga Road, I make that motion.
And I'll second that.
That was Member Saunders and Member Bankert. Emily, could I have you conduct a roll call, please?
Member Ash?
Aye.
Member Bankert?
Aye.
Member Carr?
Aye, but we're just recommending approval. We don't actually approve, right?
Correct.
Sure.
Right. And oh, by the way, thank you for having your total checklist under 100 pages. That's almost an automatic pass for future reference.
Aye.
Thank you. Member Everidge?
Yes.
Member Miller? Aye. Member Saunders?
Aye.
Member Shakaran?
Aye.
Member Stark?
Aye.
Member Wayne?
Aye.
Vice Chair Estelsago?
Aye.
Chair Lovejoy?
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously with members Esquivel, James, Patel, and Vedantam absent.
Madam Chair, if I may, for our friends from Lafayette, I notice we do not have a member from Lafayette on this panel. I think I actually might have said this 2 years ago to you guys too. So if you can talk to your city clerk and your council, and we only want good quality people who like to ask tough questions. But yeah, if you could help find somebody to represent your city, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is an informational item that will be presented by Matt Kelly and Lindy Johnson.
Good evening, CAC members. Matt Kelly, Director of Planning at CCTA. Lindy and I are here tonight to provide you with a lot of information in a short amount of time. But what we're trying to do is kind of tell a story since the last time we came to you guys and talked about the countywide transportation plan, the blueprint, and the transformative visions. I'll go over all that stuff in case you have forgotten, but in the meantime, we've taken all the feedback we heard from you guys and our other stakeholders, as well as the public. And we took that to our board last month at a board workshop, and presented what we heard from the public, presented some background information to really tell the story on what the transportation issues are in Contra Costa County, or at least what the public is feeling. And we kind of repackaged our transformative visions for moving forward in the countywide transportation plan process. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the background, the existing conditions, and really set the stage for why we need a new transportation plan. And then Lindy's going to bring in what we heard from the public and kind of how and then the final set of transformative visions that we've landed upon. So I'm gonna go through this kind of fast. There's a lot of information, but we will be sending you out all the slides tomorrow. So you'll have something to pore over when we're done. So the countywide transportation plan, it's built upon a blueprint that we worked on about a year ago and adopted in the spring. It really sets the framework for the countywide transportation plan, the principles, the strategies. The countywide plan itself is going to have policies, projects, a list of projects and programs that support those policies, and then a business plan that kind of looks at how CCTA would have to change to kind of take on some of these new roles that are being proposed in the CTP. Just a reminder of the 4 principles from the blueprint: safe travel, access for all, livable and connected neighborhoods, and growing sustainably. So those are the real tenets of the plan. So the existing conditions, what does Contra Costa look like now? Well, we are I don't probably have to tell you, we are primarily a bedroom community. We have 3 times more residents than employees. And the concentration of most of our employment is in Central County. But as you can see, most parts of the county are exporting their residents to jobs elsewhere. So when I say elsewhere, I mean outside the county. So as you can see from this graphic, the darker colors show where folks are leaving the county. So generally, the further east you go, the more people are staying within the county. But that probably means the folks from East County are generally traveling to Central County or South County, and the folks from South County and West County and La Miranda are going into Marin, Alameda, or even Santa Clara and San Francisco counties. So as I mentioned, Central County is kind of the job center for Contra Costa. So that is where a lot of folks from the other areas are headed. but people are going all over the place. But the majority of trips stay within their subregions. So this is showing intra-county. So 39% of all trips stay within the county, and this is where they're going. And then the other 59%, 60% are leaving the county, and they are generally going to San Francisco, northern Alameda County, Berkeley, Oakland, and southern Alameda County, Fremont, and Silicon Valley. So, we know our freeways are under stress, fully at capacity, going in all those directions, west and south primarily. But what we do know is that BART has capacity. So on the right, you can see that purple bar. That is BART's capacity currently, and barely half of that is being used in the yellow. And then BART has a core capacity project that will increase frequency and the capacity of the system. And that could double the current capacity in the county. So, there's a lot more opportunity to carry folks on BART. And so right here, what I'm trying to show you is that BART actually, competes well with driving in many of our corridors, and in several corridors actually beats driving by a lot. So, I don't want to look at all of them, but the kind of, one that stands out is Concord to San Francisco. Taking transit, BART, is 38 minutes faster than driving. Why wouldn't you take BART? Then you've got something like Danville to San Jose, where it takes 50 minutes longer to take transit. And we know that's because you got to go, basically, to Oakland before you can, from Danville, you might go down to Dublin, Pleasant, and BART and get on there. But it takes a fair amount of time because you're probably transferring 2 or 3 times. So in terms of commute mode shares, we find that locations on the BART corridor have the highest rates of transit usage. So, La Miranda, 2 out of 3 cities and towns have BART, and they have about 50%, only 50% are driving alone. They have, transit usage at above 10%. Which is actually pretty high for the county. And East County has the highest drive alone, but it also, has a fair number of transit riders. So we think there's a lot of parts of the county where the transit service is really there's opportunities. There's unmet demand that really could be served by various types of improvements around the county, whether it's getting people to the transit or providing new transit service for these kind of untapped markets. And then everybody always asks about work from home. Well, this is what it looks like in the county. La Miranda, Tri-Valley, San Ramon Valley area, 30% are working from home. And that's kind of an average. So on any given day, it can be much higher. Whereas in West and East County, you have pretty low rates of work from home. And in those corridors where BART is present, you see the transit mode shares, above the average, let's say. And I'll point out, my hometown, El Cerrito, is 20% for commuting. So, but we're a small town with 2 BART stations. So I think that goes to show, a higher presence of BART really we'll get folks on transit. So we know BART isn't expanding, so we have to focus on getting people to BART. So what's happening in terms of growth in the county? Well, we're expected to add about 150,000 new households. The majority of those will be in Central and East County, with the Tri-Valley area growing the slowest, which is somewhat surprising, but just, you know, they're still growing, just not as much as the rest of the county. And then jobs. We're expected to grow about 100,000 by 2050, and the concentration of that will be in West, Central, and East County. And I know job declines look weird in La Miranda and Tri-Valley, but you know, we might want to ask Patrick and Greg what's going on in La Miranda, but we know in Tri-Valley, it's generally, you know, Bishop Ranch is converting office space to housing, and that's really what's led to that decline.
Chevron, Toyota were huge. I mean, this is
Yeah. Not to mention the big tenants moving to Texas. So we know you know, intra-county commuting needs will grow, and so finding a way to accommodate all those new commuters will be very important, and working within our geography constraints as well as the policy constraints, you know, will make our job in some ways more difficult, but in some ways easier because of some of the changes in state policy that are focused on housing, but they're also limiting the expansion of our roadways. So one question our board had is where are people going? You know, what types of trips are people taking? So we decided to kind of look at our routes of regional significance, which is our network of kind of major arterials, also includes the freeways around the county, and see if there's, you know, the goal of these routes of regional significance is to make them more multimodal. So knowing the types of trips that are occurring on these facilities is really important for helping us plan for them. So we wanted to look at longer trips, looking at a road like San Pablo Dam Road. The average trip length is 17.8 miles.
I can attest to that. And it's only 45 minutes.
Yeah, only 4% of trips are under 3 miles, and those are probably all occurring within El Sobrante. So this does make it more difficult to, you know, accommodate all those trips and things other than, you know, a car. But it also, you know, gives us ideas on what we can do to the road. In terms of, you know, transit can serve some of those longer trips, but knowing where everybody is headed is important. But you can see on these maps, we've noted where those destinations are. So most folks are headed to La Miranda, probably from West County, or maybe even Solano County. And then on their way to Central County and Northern Alameda County. A lot of people avoid I-80 and head down San Pablo Dam Road to get on the freeway.
Matt, I'd be glad to share some of my ideas on that offline.
I'm sure you got anecdotes for miles.
Now, can I just comment real just briefly, like on San Pablo Dam Road? Like, to me, that's an example of where we have a transit desert. Like,
yes.
The only way you can get down there is basically, I mean, I'll bicycle it, but it's incredibly unsafe, and there's no public transit.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no option.
There did used to be an AC Transit Route 74 that right now ends kind of at the edge of El Sobrante. Used to serve the Orinda BART station, and you know, ever since it went away, we've heard bring that back. That's one conversation we, can have with AC Transit is trying to find a way to bring that route back. Because for folks in El Sobrante, that really is probably the easiest way to get to BART. So looking at Clayton Road, these are medium trips. So Clayton Road in Central County, average trip length is about 7 miles. But you do have 10% that are under 3 miles. So that's those trips could maybe be captured by walking or biking, but we've got to look at these 7 mile trips. Are those all going to BART from Clayton? And in our map, you can see a lot of them, folks are going to East County. That's probably a cut-through route. So finding a way to deal with, trying to get the cut-through folks, back on the highway or BART, and then accommodating those shorter trips in things other than cars will be a goal. Another medium length route or trips on medium length trips on another route is Bollinger Canyon Road. So right there in San Ramon. Very similar statistics to Clayton Road, and that you've got most of the trips are a decent amount and could be captured by transit, but there's also a lot of those short trips, especially with the good trail system there and a beautiful new bridge over Bollinger Canyon that could be covered by biker pedestrian trips. And then let's look at those short trips. 23rd Street in the Richmond San Pablo area, 40% are under 3 miles. That is ripe for biking and walking. And even a lot of those medium trips could get captured by biking and then transit. But that also, this is also the location of our first complete streets project in the county on Rumroll Road. And really, we think that project supports the local demographics and what they're doing. Another shorter trip route is Danville Boulevard. So, a third of the trips are under 3 miles. How can we get those folks on a bike, on some sort of device other than their car, just to drive a mile down the road to park? So we've done this for about a dozen routes. So I'll try and add those to the PowerPoint that we send out to you. I didn't want to go through them all tonight, but it is good for information and is helping us in our planning. And then looking at the bike network. So 50% of our on-street bike network overlaps with those routes of regional significance. So we know we've got to reorient some of those routes for biking so they can be used to get to major destinations. In terms of transit, 73% of our transit corridors, our transit priority corridors, are on those routes of regional significance. So figuring out a way that bus transit can be more competitive on those routes is important, and pick up some of those drivers. And then making the routes of regional significance in general just safer and more convenient for biking and walking, and placemaking. Part of the countywide plan is about placemaking and getting people to places they want to be. And that also supports economic development around the county. So trying to use transportation to support economic development and really allow our local jurisdictions to have a sense of place and get people to their downtowns. So local travel, 40% of trips in Contra Costa are less than 3 miles long. That's the county summary. So just like I said, for those routes of regional significance, there's a lot of opportunities to pull some of those short trips onto bike and ped and transit. But those trips, the 30% of those trips that are 3 to 10 miles long, those are more focused on transit, but there are some bikers that would definitely take those trips. And non-work trips, we found are highly local in nature. So, whereas everybody thinks that, when people leave their house, they're only driving, 10 miles to work. There's a lot of other trips that are going on. And those, and they're generally shorter, and they're generally shopping or school or recreation. And a lot of those could be captured in other modes. And we know a lot of those extra trips are happening when folks are working from home. So finding a way in those areas where there's a lot of folks working from home to get them out of their cars during those midday trips is really important. And then the bicycle network. So right now there is no, the countywide backbone bicycle network is incomplete. So getting that, complete is really going to help us meet those, the ability to take those trips from cars and put them onto bikes. Right now, people don't feel comfortable on these high stress type of routes like San Pablo Dam Road. And we may never make San Pablo Dam Road, feel fully safe or low stress, but there's a lot of other opportunities we have that we can really make some important streets, a low stress way to get around by biking.
Yeah, Marsh Creek is probably never going to be safe for that either. And I'm not trying to.
The county does have a plan for that, but it will be very expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you'd have to build out more road on that shelf. Otherwise, it's dangerous just for the drivers that are approaching each other as is, yeah.
Can I just ask a clarification question, Matt? Like,
Sure.
when you say Clayton Road, are you referring to Clayton and Marsh Creek? And I guess it would be the same like Ignacio as Kirker Pass in certain, but it's like one road? How do you define that?
We looked at kind of a segment, so we really just looked at like the Clayton Road segment within Concord and Ignacio Valley. I think we just looked at the Ignacio Valley portion.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, they're all interlinked. But we did look at Railroad Avenue as well in Kirker Pass in a separate fact sheet. So, and then in terms of safety, we know there's a lot of collisions happening out there, and the cost, is phenomenal. $1.3 billion a year that those collisions add to, take away from our economy. I'm not even going to read the number of KSIs, which is killed and serious injuries, because it's depressing. And it's even magnified in our equity priority communities, our parts of the county that are, have higher minority populations, higher low-income populations, lower vehicle ownership, seniors, things like that. And our Vision Zero effort is a large part of that, but it's also a large part of our countywide plan.
Oh, question, Matt. Is the KSI?
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Is it going down? Do we know if it's going down? Because it looked like that chart or the data was for 2023.
Yeah, this is 2018 to 2023.
Is that better than the period before it? Do we know?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't want to speak. I know the data isn't as robust before that period, but we can look and see what it does look like. If that is a reduction or an increase. So that's the background information. Hopefully that kind of sets a stage for what Lindy's about to present. And I'm going to stop sharing because I think she's going to share on her end.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Chair Lovejoy, Commissioners, I'm excited to further share with you about the CTP's survey and outreach opportunities and what we learned from them and gained through that experience. Give me one moment to make sure that I have everything up on the screen. Okay, give me 1 minute. I'm going to go into presentation mode. Wonderful. So phase 2 engagement feedback and draft final transformative visions. So we did a phase 1 of outreach around the countywide transportation plan, which was really asking folks if we had a good sense of their overall principles, right, and their kind of high-level strategies. The phase 2 engagement was really more diving deep into those strategies, these transformative visions, and the strategies that could help bring those transformative visions to life. It wasn't project specific. We weren't asking for folks to say, yes, I really like this idea on this road in San Pablo. But we were asking folks to give us a sense of how they might prioritize general ideas or general strategies. I'm hoping that many of you had the opportunity to take the survey. It wasn't the quickest of surveys. That was somewhat intentional. We did really want to capture a lot from the folks that participated, and it included some videos that tried to articulate to folks what these would look like if they were brought to life, which we did find to be a pretty effective outreach method, which I'll get to in a moment. So phase 2 ended in September of 2025, so not that long ago. And we will be doing one final phase of outreach for the CTP, which we're calling phase 3, but it's fairly focused on the policies element of the countywide transportation plan. And will be less of a large, robust public outreach effort and more working with stakeholder groups to ensure that we've really captured feedback on some of the policies that are being suggested as part of the countywide transportation plan. As you may remember, the 4 transformative visions that were part of the survey were to build a complete and reliable transit network, provide reliable freeway travel, create safe and comfortable streets, and support vibrant communities. We did ask folks about how they might prioritize these 4 visions in general, like where would they prioritize these 4, and then within each we gave examples and we asked for folks' feedback and information around how they might prioritize the strategies to achieve that vision. Through this presentation, I'm going to go through each one, but we're going to start with that kind of overall prioritization of vision. Just to give a little bit of input on how we did the engagement for the CTP. So we did a lot of surveys, and by that I mean we asked for a lot of folks to take the survey. We got about 3,000 responses. Most of those were in English. We had hoped to get a lot more in Spanish in particular than we did, though we do think the political environment may have played some part into why it was harder to get responses in Spanish than we had hoped. We did get a pretty decent response of Chinese surveys, not exactly representative, but not far off. And part of that is that we did do a lot of these pop-up events with someone who was a Chinese speaker and was able to communicate directly with a lot of folks who came in and needed that language translation. We did 9 events. There was more than 500 participants of those events. We also had an online open house. Those videos that I mentioned were featured in that online open house. It was a space that folks could go into and walk around and navigate around, but it wasn't a live activity. It actually just existed within a digital space. We also held focus groups. We had 17 participants and did 3 focus groups, one in West County, one that was really kind of central and east focused, and one that was kind of county-wide and really concentrated a lot on our CBOs and CBO feedback and input. We also did a lot of direct outreach with CBOs and partner organizations, and then did stakeholder engagement, which for the sake of this particular presentation, we're considering a lot of like the committees. You all would be included in that. Though stakeholder engagement is a very robust term that can mean many different things and will, even in further presentations we give here to you all. So for the survey itself, we actually tracked every survey that came in and tried to understand how someone reached that survey. So it was really informative to us to understand like what was the best outreach methods that we deployed for this effort. The highest survey count we got was actually from our CBO Ambassador Program. This was a new initiative for CCTA. It was the first time that we've embarked on this, but it was partnering with CBOs. We actually gave them a small stipend to compensate for their staff time and asked them to be kind of ambassadors in the community for the CTP. After that, we definitely saw a lot of impact from social media, both ads and non-ads. So organic social media was actually more successful than the ads, which is likely folks like you being willing to share it, but also your cities and the CBOs within them. I will mention here that the YouTube video ad got about 314 survey responses and was our lowest ad buy. So what that speaks to is that the video we made of the open house was attractive and interesting to people. It looked like something they hadn't seen before, and they were willing to be drawn in and engage as a result. So this is really great for my team. It gives us the opportunity to learn about what marketing and communication strategies are most effective here in Contra Costa County. So the feedback that we received from the survey, from the stakeholders, from even our board, really did help to, I will say, engage us as an organization in how we might use the feedback to evolve the transformative visions. And at the end of this, I will go through exactly where we landed. So I'm going to go through each of these, as I mentioned, and kind of provide feedback for all of the 4 transformative visions, but I'll start with the overall. So feedback in general reflected strong support for transit and safe streets. You can see there that the board, stakeholders, survey, and our focus groups all supported complete reliable transit network. We got a lot of consensus on that as a very supported need in Contra Costa County. Creating safe and comfortable streets also saw pretty strong support. That grayed out circle doesn't mean that there weren't supportive, folks weren't supportive, just that we also heard folks who had concerns. And so we kind of created this neutral response. The last thing I will sort of touch on here is under key points, there was general concern about CCTA's role related to vibrant and livable communities. A lot of folks asking questions about what that means. And so I do think you'll see that reflected in some of what we are doing with the transformative visions moving forward. So let's go through what folks thought about complete and reliable transit network and the strategies that we proposed to make that work or make that happen here in Contra Costa. The most popular was regional transit connections, but accessible and seamless transit was a very close second. Emily kindly sent the survey out to you all so that you hopefully have it as a point of reference, because I know these titles don't always translate quite immediately. But just as a quick reminder, regional transit connections was really about thinking how folks use transit to get out of the county. Makes sense that that really resonates here in Contra Costa, where BART is such a big part of what we have as a transit asset. Accessible and seamless transit, however, was somewhat of a new idea, right? It was mobility hubs, asking folks if they would like to see these sort of transit centers or transit hubs within their community. And we were surprised to see a lot of support for that. Part of what may have driven that was a video available that could show folks what that might look like. It made it a little more real than perhaps if we were asking folks their input on something they'd never seen before, didn't have any ability to picture. After that, we had Show Up and Go Transit. That's really increasing frequency on main lines. And then Transit for All Neighborhoods. That's thinking about things like microtransit. 41% to 42% is so minor here that I would say it's probably fair to say we didn't get a huge difference in people's opinion or preference between those two. We did ask about on-demand shuttle service. This is something that exists in East County, but not throughout the rest of the county. And so we were curious what folks thought of this. 6.6 was the average score, which is pretty leaning towards a support position. When you actually look deep at the data, most folks that showed a level of support had a pretty significant level of support. And those who were apprehensive were pretty apprehensive. So we didn't actually get a ton of folks who were in the 6 or 7. We got a lot of folks who were closer to 8, 9, and 10. And similarly, a lot of folks who were in that 1, 2, and 3. Small scale air service, we got about a 4.8. This is interesting and probably reflects a lot of folks kind of apprehensive around new technology, but it also might reflect folks not being sure what we meant by that, and this being something that is fairly foreign. And so one of the things we do hope to do in the future, and as we continue to work on education around the CTP, is to sort of understand what people's current perception of what we mean by that is, and to try to do a little bit more communication with folks. So respondents in general, so a lot of it, the pop-up events and other opportunities for folks to give us more direct feedback, more qualitative information. These were some of the things that were expressed around that small-scale air travel. Event participants were interested in improving local first and last mile connections as well as regional connections. These are some quotes that we just sort of pulled. I don't know that any of these will be all that surprising to you, but it does help to illustrate common themes. Stakeholders supported more frequent transit service and first and last mile connections, something that continually comes up both in the surveys, stakeholder engagement. We are a county where we know first and last mile is very important, and we definitely saw that reflected in all of this engagement. Focus groups participants desired more frequent and reliable transit, similarly, but they really highlighted certain population groups. So we heard a lot about students and seniors from our focus groups, likely because many of them serve those populations, right, and are able to speak to their needs maybe more directly than we're hearing from the population or the public at large. So, to sort of go into these as a whole chart, to go into each one, but give it to you all as an encompassing chart. This is the broad support for transit service and sort of where we heard that support most eloquently, I guess I would say, is in the stakeholders. You sort of see that bar going down almost the whole way. Similarly, focus groups, with the exception of regional transit connections, saw general support all the way down. Our survey, that, however, didn't have any specific strategy that really rose to the top. So while there's great support for this in our county, folks aren't necessarily saying, and this is what I want that to look like. Gives us a lot more to dive into. So as a result, we as a staff team proposed merging air mobility into mobility hub planning. We see that the county's public and stakeholders are interested in mobility hubs. They'd like to see a network like that exist in Contra Costa County, and thinking about how small scale air travel might fit into a plan like that seemed like a very natural place. And so we are moving Contra Costa Takes Flight, or this idea around small scale air travel, into the accessible and seamless transit priority. Now moving on to providing reliable freeway travel. I recognize this is a fairly robust presentation, so recognizing that there's an opportunity for questions at the very end, I also just want to acknowledge if there's something really that you'd like to make sure you ask, please go ahead and raise your hand, because there is a lot here to go through. So when it comes to freeway travel, respondents are most interested in fixing the crowded parts of the freeway. So improving the freeway network, this is really specific bottlenecks that have been identified in Contra Costa County, was by far the most popular strategy. Second was rapid recovery in freeways. So this is really clearing crashes quickly, making sure that those crashes do not impact congestion or traffic quite as much as they would today, and using technology to ensure this occurs. While this is a relatively innovative strategy, it is not brand new. This does exist in other parts of the world. After that was smart lane management and high-tech freeways, which were fairly similar. Both of them were about using technology to manage congestion. Both of these are fairly new ideas, not something that we currently have deployed very much in the Bay Area, throughout the state of California, or even in the nation. And so again, there is a little bit of a question of whether folks are like, I'm not sure if I like that idea, I've never done it or haven't engaged with it. Smart lane management does include expressways and express lanes, however, and folks do tend to express some hesitation around those, as I'm sure you all are familiar with. So it's possible that part of that is also reflecting some of the pushback against those. So concerns with the high-tech freeways, we did specifically ask about this because it was a newer concept. We wanted to sort of gauge folks' interest or concerns, and many of the concerns were about high costs with low return and about fairness and privacy, which are all issues I think we're going to have to think about, even in projects like Smart Signals, right? As we start to use technology more in the transportation system, we're going to have to be thoughtful about how we communicate privacy and fairness concerns. Here's some quotes just to sort of capture some of what we heard. I'm not going to read these to you all, but they are available in the presentation. So our stakeholders want to make freeways less of a barrier and address congestion in ways that support climate and equity goals. So I think there was a little bit more intentionality around a lot of the commentary that we heard from our stakeholders. Good example would be, for example, there was some concerns expressed that freeways are not transformative vision and that freeway projects may not fully address equity and climate goals. Interestingly, though, we are sort of hearing from the general public that they want those bottlenecks addressed, right? And so as we continue to have these conversations, both through the CTP and perhaps in a future TEP, it'll be important for us to kind of flush through a lot of that and those conversations. Focus group participants want to equitably address freeway congestion. So again, some concerns about expressways and the idea that they might not be the most equitable way of addressing congestion. There was some concern here also about future-ready autonomous vehicle technology and who that would benefit. So I think this will also come up around questions of privacy and fairness. Here is a summary. So as you can sort of see, focus groups had a lot of support for this strategy and were pretty supportive of rapid recovery freeways and smart lane management. At the survey, we really just saw that building out of the network as the primary place of support. As a result of the feedback, all of which was just summarized, we are proposing that we merge future-ready corridors into rapid recovery freeways. A lot of the future-ready corridor is about using technology to manage congestion. Well, the rapid recovery freeway is also about using technology to quickly identify crashes and clear them. So it seemed like a good nexus. It also was a point in which we recognized the public likely needed more communication to explain what this would look like and mean, which is the same as how we might deploy a rapid recovery freeway. And so we thought there was a strong nexus there and are proposing just a merging of those strategies. We are also proposing consolidating lane management strategies and focusing messaging on bottlenecks. So what this means essentially for my team is thinking about how we communicate about smart lane management, really helping to articulate to the public why decisions are made around smart lane management, and thinking about how express lanes are communicated with the general public. I will be honest, this is not new news for me nor my team. So creating safe and comfortable streets. So redesigning streets to put to put people first, making everyday travel safer, easier, and more comfortable. This was a very supported transformative vision. The most supported strategy under it was the Safe and Friendly Streets for Everyone. That really was about making streets walkable and friendly, things like lighting and trees, right? But also making sure that there's ramps on streets, that there's places for folks to sit if that is a need, building out a more pedestrian-friendly network. Followed by safe and smooth traffic flow. This is things like smart signals, and it also included maintenance on streets. So for those in your community who might really just say, all I want the Transportation Authority to do is pave the roads, they were likely to have clicked safe and smooth traffic flow. Countywide bike network and safe ways to get to school were both pretty substantially lower than the first two. Safe ways to get to school was probably the most surprising result of this survey for our team. We did anticipate that that would be a bit higher. I will share that in certain parts of the county, including La Marinda, this was substantially higher, closer to 45%. One of the things that we are proposing that might explain that is that those parts of the county have things like a school bus service, and other parts of our county do not. And so we may be seeing a different appreciation or acknowledgement of what those services can do, both to congestion and just for the community in places that are benefiting from those programs. That being said, it's definitely something we look forward to diving more into, understanding better. So respondents, we did ask folks about the countywide bike network and sort of to share if they didn't choose it as a priority, why they didn't. And many folks just said, I only got to pick two, right? It was hard. I would love to have picked them all. But there was also concern about whether bike infrastructure can worsen traffic in certain places and the investment of bike infrastructure compared to the ROI. This is some of the quotes that we heard. Stakeholders broadly supported People First Streets. There was some pushback over removing parking or slowing down car traffic, like what would the implications or impacts of some of these potential projects be? And there was suggestions around automated enforcement as well as public education on safe driving practices, particularly in West and East County. Our focus groups supported strategies to make the streets safer for people of all ages and abilities. Again, we tended to hear a little bit more about specific groups and what specific groups might be, most impacted or benefit most from some of these strategies. Here is a summary table. You see a lot of green here. I think part of that is that this, like transit, was fairly well supported. As staff, we proposed renaming School Street component to clarify the messaging and to rename it Safer Ways to Get to School, which aligns a little closer to safe routes to school, really emphasizing that this is about getting to school. And also, this messaging will likely allow my team to communicate about the congestion that schools create and how alleviating that could benefit everyone, even those who might not actually be trying to access the school itself. All right, we are to our last transformative vision, which was support vibrant communities, revitalizing public spaces and community hubs to create lively, well-connected places where people can live, gather, and get around without depending on a car. The top strategy here, or the most supported strategy here, was the community-centered spaces. This gave folks a sense of enabling communities, cities to shut down city streets for events or to use streets in new and creative ways that created community. As you can see, folks were definitely interested in that. I think you're likely seeing here a reflection of just folks being excited about the creation of community and creation of space. Revive and Thrive also saw some support. This is really something where we are bringing in economic development into the transportation conversation in a way we haven't always done in the past, and that is a little bit new. And so I do think you saw a little bit of the question there of like, what would this look like, and how might CCTA be able to influence helping to make economic development areas thrive, or to increase transportation to places of economic development. Trail-oriented development was very close to Revive and Thrive. Again, that 1% is hard to really say is substantial or even significant. And then Reimagine the Shoreline was quite substantially lower, though as you might not be surprised to hear, Reimagining the Shoreline was more popular by those who live near the shoreline. So resonated more in those communities. So concerns, we did hear a little bit about degrading natural areas, maintaining requirements to keep them clean and safe, and limited value for transportation investment when we asked about trail-oriented development specifically. I think that this is definitely a lot of what we asked about with trail-oriented development, or what we kind of described, was taking something like the Iron Horse Trail and thinking about it as a community asset, and wanting to ensure that maybe we did consider economic development or community development around those spaces. And I think that a lot of folks were kind of inclined to see that as perhaps in conflict with the recreational element. And so that's, again, helpful for my team to sort of think about, like, how do we message something like this and present it so that it doesn't mean that the trail purpose wouldn't still be very recreational, but just that it would be more heavily used for that purpose because of the assets around it or near it. Event participants, so folks at pop-ups, these were some of the comments that we heard. Stakeholders, once again, emphasize the impact on certain groups. For example, participants emphasize that seniors, people with disabilities, and underserved communities should be considered throughout planning processes and benefit from all investments. So they're really thinking about, like, thinking of our whole county as one large community, and how are we ensuring that everyone is benefiting from these sorts of initiatives. Really quick, I do just want to hit here, because I think it's very important to a lot of the work you all do. Housing affordability was mentioned many times throughout the survey by many folks. So certainly want to acknowledge how relevant that is to our community. Focus groups, supported strategies to make streets safer for people of all ages and abilities. Again, we're hearing about kind of specific community groups. So a little bit less green here. I think that is reflected overall in how folks prioritized this transformative vision. It was the least popular transformative vision. That being said, I do think that it's interesting that there is not a consistent green across any of these four groups. So even though it was the lowest one, it was also the one in which maybe there was the least consensus around what we would do if we were to really invest in this sort of transformative vision. So as such, we are considering consolidating the components and taking some of the Revive and Thrive's strategies and putting them into other strategies, but no longer having it as a transformative vision. So this is the largest change to what we put forward as the CTP. We would be consolidating the transformative visions from 4 down to 3. In many ways, I think that's very digestible for the public, easy to understand, and also keeps the CTP pretty transit and transportation transportation focused, while still allowing us to incorporate some of what we heard from the public that they really supported or really liked. So for example, livable streets for daily life, so designing streets so people, including kids, older people, and people who use wheelchairs can get around safely and comfortably, would become livable streets for daily life to make streets safe and friendly for everyone. So again, we're just sort of clarifying messaging, and then merging the community-centered streets and Revive and Thrive into making streets safe and friendly for everyone. So really thinking about those streets instead of just how do we make them really pedestrian-friendly and easily and walkable, really more community friendly, and thinking about the whole community around the streets themselves. We also are proposing merging trail components. So basically, this would be merging the countywide low-stress bike network and this trail-oriented development work into a high-quality paths and trails strategy. So taking the best of both of those things and kind of merging them into one. And we are proposing just removing Reimagine the Shoreline. While it doesn't mean that there wouldn't still be projects or initiatives that might be supported in the future or that would even be in the CTP that certainly meet this goal, it would no longer be identified specifically as a strategy of the CTP. Leaving us to our draft final transformative visions, which would be building a complete and reliable transit network, creating people-first streets, and providing reliable freeway travel, but with some adjusted strategies underneath, right? We've done some rewording, some clarifying, and some tweaking to make it so that they're hopefully easier to understand and also incorporating more within them. I am going to skip the discussion slide because this was mostly the questions that we posed to our board members, but I certainly welcome your thoughts in this similar vein. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Lindy, and thank you, Matt. Really excellent presentations, well thought out and well presented. I'm sure we have some questions. Let's start over here with Member Erickson.
I agree with what you put out there. I'm just curious, because I kind of mentioned this in last night's meeting too. Are there those are really great overall visions, but are there kind of, is there some sort of consideration about like marketable or measurable goals in that? Like one of the things I'm curious about is, you know, when you're talking about accessibility, right, for all, would a goal, an example of a measurable goal, you know, all streets and roadways will meet ADA compliance by the end of the plan, you know, by 2050 or something like that. Does that, or, you know, all corridors of regional, yeah, will have multiple options available. Like, you know, there'll be an option besides just driving down San Pablo Dam Road, as an example. Does that?
Yeah, so I'll let Matt chime in here as well, because I imagine he might have some thoughts. One of the things that the CTP does include is a set of policies. So the transformative visions are telling us what are our big visions and the strategies we think could help us reach them. The policies are saying what policies might need to be deployed to help us ensure that we are meeting those visions with these identified strategies. And one of the policies that will likely be in the CTP, we're still working on the fine tuning of that, and that's what I'll let Matt speak to, is a performance-based policy. So ensuring that things are measurable and that we can, if we say this is the vision and we do a project, we then have to measure that that project achieved that before we go fund a similar project, right? Or that we can learn from those projects and hopefully have a certain level of fluidity so that we can learn. Matt, is there anything you want to add to that?
That was a great summary. Yes. We intend to be a performance-based agency, and the plan will be performance-based. So establishing thresholds or goals to meet, you know, we may not say 100%, we may say, you know, set a goal of 90%, something like that. But yeah, I think that's a fair type of goal, you know, and something that we can definitely consider for the plan.
Our newest member, would you like to comment?
My brain may have been in, I don't know, Barcelona or someplace when you were talking about this, but I'm wondering about the demographics behind the information that was gathered. And I know you wanted more Spanish speakers, but do you have some of the demographics? Like what was the makeup of the majority of people who?
It's a great question. Yeah, and I apologize. I probably should have gone through this. The survey results that you are seeing are reflected here as a fully weighted survey. So while we received about 3,000 survey responses, the survey information that's being reflected here is weighted, and therefore it's about 1,600 surveys. That means that about 1,600 folks filled out all of the demographic information, and then we weighted it so that it was reflective of the county as a whole. Language is not one of those demographics, right? So, and it would have been quite challenging because we would have had to get quite a number of Spanish speakers. That being said, race is. And there is a little bit of difference that we were able to break out, and if you're interested, I can share with you, based on some of those demographics. For example, there's a few things that are more supported by, even as small of the group as this is, by like Native American, and there was I'm trying to think of the other one that was sort of unique. There was some demographic information that we looked at around income that I think was kind of substantial around some of the strategies. But all of that is to say the survey itself is weighted. So as much as you trust the social science, it should be reflective of the county. And just for those of you who are interested as a comparison, when you see polling is oftentimes between 400 and at its very most 1,200 folks. So this is a weighted survey of actually more than most polling would be.
Okay. Yeah, that was something that I was curious about, like what was the median household income, and what was the, and how does that extrapolate against, what's their.
Yeah, no,
what's their
agreed.
ethnic- Yeah,
It was really important to us that the survey be reflective of the county.
thank you.
I might have missed it, but I was thinking as you were giving your survey about the smart streets, the smart lights, and how we've kind of encountered the challenge of implementing that because the different cities aren't cooperating. And I was wondering if we've done the research or the polling based off of what the people are saying as opposed to what the cities are doing. Does that make sense?
Do you mean, maybe, let me
Yeah.
ask you a clarifying question back. So do you mean, have we done any polling to understand what the residents of each community would prefer their signal lights be willing to do versus what the city's willing to deploy on the signal light itself?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. It's a great question, and definitely one I'd love to take back to my team and sort of think about how we might engage that. That being said, the Smart Signals project has not quite moved into the public outreach phase. So we have not done any kind of research or surveying or polling because Smart Signals is still pretty early in design. That being said, we'd have to likely do that with some consideration of what the cities wanted to ask, but I do think it'd be very interesting, and I appreciate the consideration.
Thanks, Max and Lindy. The question I'll ask you might prefer to put to the end, and if you do, that's fine. Just kind of, this is kind of a check-in point, as I see it. Survey results, kind of what's next. So if you want to hold that one to the end, that's fine. That's my only question, or you can answer it now if you wish.
Just sort of curiosity about where we go from here. I think actually it would probably be good to just summarize that at the end. Are you okay with that, Matt, if we just wrap up with, okay, yeah, at the end, we'll just give you all a kind of a full summary of what the rest of this is and how we'll close out the CTP process.
Okay, I'm going to pass to Vice Chair Escalcega.
Thank you, Lindy. Thank you for the presentation to both of you. I guess I know one respondent touched on financing and whether it was worth it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts with the current climate as well as future funding. We're looking at stagflation. We're looking at so many variables that could impact this vision up to when everything will be executed. So how are you all approaching finance?
Yeah, the financial element of that. So the countywide transportation plan is fiscally unconstrained. So it is meant to be a visionary document. It is meant to ask the county, what would we like our transportation system to look like, and how could we achieve that from a strategic vision standpoint? It does not consider the financial cost. though, and I'll turn to Matt to give more information on this, I do think oftentimes folks will look at their CTP in any county and find out, well, how much would it cost to do it though, right? Just so that we know, so that we have the ability to go out to the public and say, if we were to have a genie and they said, well, how much do you need? We'd have a number, right? That being said, the CTP is not here to prioritize projects or to decide what the best ROI is. However, I do think it's important to consider this performance-based policy and what that is in some ways suggesting, which is that as an organization, we want to care about the impact of projects and be sure that we are investing public dollars in the things that are most effective for the community we serve. Matt, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just say in general, we probably have about $20 to $30 billion in projects identified, but a sales tax measure, a new sales tax measure similar to Measure J would bring in about $3 billion, though we can leverage that generally 3 to 1, but that still leaves a large gap in the number of projects that could be funded versus not. So that's where the performance-based planning comes in, and we start looking at projects and how they benefit certain populations, how many people they move, how all these different variables. So yeah, when we move on from the CTP, then we will start crunching the numbers and coming up with a fiscally constrained plan for the public to consider.
Hi, Lindy. Hey, I don't want to be indelicate, but I think the messaging around the school bus stuff is still just too indirect to hit somebody in the heart and tug at it. And I would gently recommend trying to find some language that puts a big carrot in front of people or sort of touches them in their convenience, organ, where they're thinking like, gosh, this is going to make it easier to get my kids to school, and oh my gosh, now there's also less, traffic on the road. So something about, well, I'm not the wordsmith, but I'm thinking words like easy, free, school transportation to decongest school time traffic, something along those lines, where they can see the two, major impacts to their lives of like, hey, I wouldn't have to necessarily drive my kid to school, and also, oh gosh, that actually frees up the roadways too. I didn't know that. So that was my only suggestion there.
Agreed. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good communication we can do in that space. And I do think it's very important for us to be thoughtful. One of our board members did bring up at our board retreat that there's an interesting question about how many folks are getting kids to school, right? As a portion of our population, how many folks actually do have school-aged children? And if it is relatively low, then to your point, how do we consider ensuring that folks are thinking about, yes, but it can bring convenience to all?
Right, exactly. Even for those that don't have children, you've got decluttered roads. And I think that will hit with a lot of commuters because they'll say, oh God, school's back in session. I forgot how easy my commute has been all summer. That will pluck some strings on their heart there.
Yeah, one of the things we have thought about doing from a very basic standpoint is actually to take drone footage of what the certain roadways do look like when school is in session versus not. It's a very blank, obvious way to sort of show folks the impact. And you feel it, a lot of folks do, but it's something helpful to sort of see. And in many cases, you actually can see it. Like it is that.
It's very tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I threw the word free in there, of course, but I have strong feelings about this concept of there's a lot of money, of course, that goes into promoting, bus use, et cetera, whatnot. By the way, I recently had some work done on my car, and I love our CCC TA system around here. I don't know if any of you, I didn't grow up riding the bus in the city or anything like that, but the transit app will tell you, you can see in real time when that bus is going to be there at your stop. It makes it literally like a Google Maps will tell you, hey, you can chill and drink your coffee for about 7 minutes, and then you need to start walking to stop number 12, and it's this far away. It's incredible, and it offers you other options, like you can look at Uber and other kinds of transport modes. But if it weren't that it were just coming every 15 minutes, to Clayton, and there were some other options, I would be
more avid
using it.
rider.
Yeah, I would be a more avid rider. And again, if the barrier was it was free for for people for some time, I just think that if you offset, you take away the costs of promotion and all this, and the payment systems that they have to support and everything, you may find out that it's not actually that expensive to not charge. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know anything about anything, but I do know that that will clear up a lot of roads if people would take that.
There is some interesting social science research on free transit and where it's effective or not effective. And definitely there's some questions around public safety that tend to get drawn up around free transit. There was some very interesting experiments with free transit actually right after COVID, as ridership was needing to uptick, and we have some very interesting data as a result of that. If you all are ever interested, not to volunteer here, but Danielle, our new Deputy Executive Director, has a lot of experience in that space and would probably be happy to share some thoughts with you. It may be worthwhile, perhaps, if we do end up doing something around rock and roll, Matt, maybe we sort of have a little bit of a conversation around free transit there, because it often comes up specifically around youth. And one of the interesting conversations is around, like, at what point does it work to be free versus other circumstances where it's discounted, or it's more about convenience, right? Like, not even so much the kids need it to be free, but they need it to be very easy.
Thank you,
Thank
Lindy.
you.
Just a question. So that was a lot to consume. I couldn't absorb it all. So I
It's fair.
assume you're sending it to us, right?
Yeah.
And so if we have questions, just send them to Matt or to you, depending on which piece it was?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Just following up on Member Miller's observation about school bus traffic. Traffic's program in the Tri-Valley, from what I hear, it has been pretty successful
Yes.
since its inception, God knows, 15 years ago or more. So maybe there is some thoughts of going back, asking them how successful data as far as before, after studies or congestion, level measurements on roads near schools.
Yeah.
To get a good idea and then show to people next that, hey, this is what the actual data shows with schools in Danville and San Ramon.
Definitely. Traffics is a CCTA-funded program,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I do think that it's one that we could do a better job also sharing with the public, is a CCTA program, and sort of communicating. But yeah, absolutely partnering with them to understand what data they collected is a great suggestion. Thank you.
I think it has not been promoted enough,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. No questions at this time.
Awesome. First, Matt, congratulations on the promotion. He is now our Director of Planning for CCTA, working up 20 years. Have you been here?
No, only 19.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it.
And I look forward to that data. And just to Member Miller's points about the bus schedule and everything, I was fortunate. I chair the Infrastructure Committee, which includes transportation for East Bay leadership. I point this out because Lindy was also attended as a member of that, representing CCTA. And we had 3 of the larger bus organizations in the region on it, and they were all talking about the zero emissions goals from the state. And the problem is the numbers aren't working out. Like, the plan was great to move every bus to a zero emissions bus 10 years ago, but the numbers aren't working that way. And what you're looking at is, in the near future, you could take that money and put it to a zero emission vehicle and cut half your services. Or you can put that money, get a hybrid vehicle maybe, and then put the rest of that money towards promoting the bus routes, improving the schedule and transit. And that has come up as a policy position of that organization to work with legislators and other areas. So the transit agencies are struggling with potential cost to increase routes, and it just ties into BART, and just people still haven't rebounded onto public transit. Matt, I'm wondering on the deaths related to pedestrian and bikes. I know our numbers are there. How do we compare to other jurisdictions like urban, suburban-esque counties that we are? Is that a good number? Is that a bad number? Help me understand that.
That's a great question, Member Ash. I will have to get back to you on that. I would say it's probably about average, though I would say because we have, I'd say in a comparable area with high-speed roadways like we have, it's probably comparable. But if you look at, a place like maybe like San Mateo County, where it doesn't have as many kind of, big, fast boulevards and things like that, it's probably higher. But then if you look at a place like, say San Joaquin County, I would guess that it's probably lower. But that's just me surmising, and I can definitely try and back that up with some actual data.
It looks like UC Berkeley has some program called Safe Trek, where they track pedestrian and bicycle fatalities or injuries and fatalities.
Yeah, that's actually the program that provides the data that we use. It's, yeah.
I would love it if it's not too complicated, and doesn't kill your schedule. If it would be helpful just to see that. And yeah, there's a point of apples to apples, and close enough. And then Lindy, I just wanted to say, after having looked through all that data, poured through this and spent months on it yourself, what are before we go forward, what are some of your biggest takeaways to help us go forward from here? What caught your attention really?
Yeah, I think the staff did a great job of thinking about where can we combine things, where can we increase clarity, right? I think the one that I really appreciated the most is thinking about that paths and trails, right? Helping folks think about and emphasize the trail aspect of Contra Costa County, which I think a lot of folks feel a real connection, a certain heart towards the trail in their community, whether you're in Lafayette or you're on the Iron Horse or even the Canal Trail. And I think also understanding what does that mean for East County, right? How do we continue to engage in that conversation, particularly as we know folks like CCWD are thinking about further conversion of some of theirs to trails, right? Some of their right-of-way to trails. That being said, I think a lot of what you all have brought up tonight is similar to what we are thinking, which is how do we better message school traffic and thinking about school traffic? How do we address that we understand the importance from a transportation systems perspective of express lanes, but our public is not very enthusiastic about them? And then how do we talk about things like smart signals and high-tech freeways and find a way for that to relate to people in the same way that school traffic does, right? Or in the same way that their local trail does? How do we make that matter from a heart storytelling perspective, which makes for very interesting work for my team, because I do think that a lot of what we're going to need to do is say hey, we have a whole transportation system and it needs to be managed as a system. And that's somewhat of a new concept. And it's a concept that requires a certain level of sophistication to communicate about. It's not quite the same as hey, we think the freeway could get bigger and therefore it might be easier to drive through the freeway. Instead, now we're at this whole new age of saying, actually, even building the freeway bigger would not help your traffic, and that doesn't translate very easily. So, but I do think one of the main takeaways that we learned from the process overall was just to really understand where folks are connected to their community and better dive into those spaces. So like deepening community relationships with like PFCs and PTAs, leveraging groups like the Walk and Roll community network and the volunteer group that exists there, like understanding where folks know their community and working with this group more, right? I think that you all were asked to share the survey, did share the survey. Thank you very much. I saw many of your posts on social media, but also I think it would have been great for us to probably come to all of you and sort of say like, who is the person in your city who we should talk to about how to best reach the members of your community? And I think that's something that we hope to do even better in the future.
Yeah, along those lines, I have a question about the ambassador program, the CBO. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And maybe we can get involved in that.
So the CBO ambassador program was, again, first of its kind for us here at CCTA. We invited CBOs to apply through an online application and asked them to essentially create a short scope of work. We said, hey, if we were able to give you $1,000, what would you do with that to help us get the word out about the CTP? And if you were a larger organization, if we were able to give you $3,000, what would you do to get the word out about the CTP? They created that scope of work. We took those applications. Because of the funding that we had set aside and the fact that we had these two different amounts, we actually were able to fund everyone who came forward, which was surprising. And we learned a lot from those different organizations and working with them. They gave us a ton of feedback because they only had 3 weeks to promote the survey, which was not very long at all. And so they gave us a ton of feedback about what would have worked better if they had had a longer period of time or what they learned through the experience. We had 16 participating organizations. They ranged from the Taxpayers Association, who mostly worked within their own membership, through Contra Costa First Five, who mostly did like paid advertising and actually was the most successful nonprofit that we worked with. But we also worked with an organization that just works with those with developmental disabilities and their families. We worked with an organization that only works with seniors. We worked with Choice in Aging, which works with seniors, but also their families. And so they did, you know, a fairly robust campaign. The 16 organizations were the most successful way for us to get survey responses, which I think was really exciting for us to see and definitely told us again about how important it is to work with community ambassadors, with folks who are already trusted in their community and who know how to speak to their community about the importance of whatever the issue may be, in this case, transportation. So we do hope to do this again, definitely thinking about it for future large-scale outreaches efforts like this, but also for like accessible transportation, right? Like how do we make sure when we want to really understand how to better our accessible transportation system that we're working with the groups and folks and nonprofits that are already in that community. So thanks for asking. It was a really exciting program.
Member Ash, did I cut you off? Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
I just wanted to try to do a magic trick for everybody.
It looks like, do we have any more? Oh, go ahead.
So I think this discussion about trails is interesting because I think when you look at the maps, I think they are recreational for all intents and purposes. When you think about England and footpaths, they were shortcuts. And so how do you get from here to, you know, maybe downtown Lafayette, rather than going all the way around because there's giant apartment buildings and places that won't let you cross through it? How do you get trails that you can either ride your bike the short way as opposed to the long way or walk? And so it just sort of tumbled to me as this discussion was going on. I don't really know if there's anything to that, but I mean, I lived in England and I've been there a lot, and there were shortcuts. Those were not paths, they were shortcuts so that you got there quick.
Which in some cases, some of our trails could be, right? I mean, there are definitely times and situations where it's faster to take the Iron Horse Trail than it is to drive that similar pathway. Just as a point of example, when we talk about economic development around pathways and trails, the Atlanta Beltline is a very good example of that, and maybe one to glance at if you're looking at something we're using as a potential model. They did a lot of work on the Atlanta Beltline to make it a very easy recreational space, and it's heavily used. And as a result, a lot of housing and economic development occurred around it because there was so many people moving through that space every day that it made sense to put up signs that said coffee this way, right? But they also spent a lot of time and energy thinking about how to maintain that trail so that it's quite aesthetically pleasing. It's an enjoyable park-like experience. And so I think it's definitely one we're looking at to learn from. And to your point, can at times be a shortcut. It's
Yeah,
faster
that-
to use.
That makes me think of like tunnel tops over
Yeah,
in San Francisco. And also, not the first place that would come to mind, but when I visited my brother in Dallas, they actually have something that is grassland over a freeway in downtown Dallas as well, which shocked me. And yeah, there's lots of businesses and stuff on the sides of that. It's heavily trafficked. There's art museums and stuff nearby. It's actually a very nice district. And to Member Saunders' point, I was reminded of the sort of the story that comes up over and over about how once upon a time there was a university, and when the university was built, they didn't build any of the sidewalks, and they waited until the kids had foot trafficked between the buildings to see where the highly trafficked areas were. We're past that point, unfortunately. We're not going to be able to eminent domain things because people are walking over buildings. It's already filled in. But anyway, it was a thought.
An interesting one, for sure. Definitely something we wish we could replicate sometimes, just for the interest.
All right. Well, very interesting presentation, and I appreciate how you engaged the community on what their priorities were, but also we're incorporating some of those strategies, by the transportation professionals on, where the problems are and how those might be solved. Yes, and a lot of different strategies. So really appreciate your presentation and Matt's as well. Any other comments? I think we've got them all. Is there anybody wishing to speak during the public comment, online or written?
We have no virtual or written public comments.
Okay, so that concludes our regular agenda items. And the next item on the agenda is member and staff comments. Do we have any committee members or staff who would have anything they would like to share?
I just have an agenda item. Is that the next thing for
Yes,
agenda
but you
items?
can go
Oh,
ahead
okay,
and
sorry.
add one here.
Not to keep everybody long. There's one item, Matt, that I would like to discuss at an agenda. I don't know if it's possible. I know the city of Walnut Creek is doing a Treat Boulevard corridor improvement project that involves essentially the elimination of one lane on Treat, but they're putting in 2 bike lanes and pedestrian walk lanes, right? And so curious if, I don't know, obviously we can't ask Walnut Creek to come and speak about that, but I'm not sure if CCTA is involved at all, and maybe they have a plan to address, the rise in traffic that may occur to the commuters. So
I've actually gotten 2. So I sit here as a result of being on the Walnut Creek Transportation Commission, and we have had 2 presentations on it. First, I want to point out it is a county project. 95% of it, yeah, Matt shaking his head, 95% of it is actually county unincorporated. And I think they've done a horrible job explaining, because this has been like 9 years in the making. That is actually one of the most deadly intersections for pedestrians, for bikers, and just horribly designed. And that is why they are doing it.
Is this on the north side of Treat? Where is this?
It's coming from like Oak Grove, Clayton, Concord, down all the way up towards the BART station.
Oh, okay, so it's right there in the middle.
But it's closer, like almost right here. Like all of this area right here of Treat would be impacted coming in this way. Going back, what? Arguably improved. It's been very contentious, but it is a county decision, and I think there has just been a total failure of the county, particularly to explain the amount of injuries and deaths that have occurred there.
yeah, sure. Just not disputing that. I just would like to see a plan, if there is one, regards to the increase in traffic.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, the county already has a pitch deck and they have a consulting team. Maybe we can they should even have a video of what they showed to the Walnut Creek Transportation Commission. We could probably just send that link out. Emily, you can ask Matt Redmond for that over in Walnut Creek, and that way we can look at it in our time. It should be publicly available.
Yeah, and there's a project report from the county that we can provide. In terms of bringing that to this group, we generally try and focus on things that are kind of countywide interest. But if there is, interest from the entire committee, I could work on that. Otherwise, I could, put, individual members in touch with county staff if they have specific questions.
Along the lines of adding future agenda items, I saw some nods on the free transit studies. Can I get a kind of a show of maybe head nods on who? Okay, so it looks like there's quite a few people who would be interested in a presentation on that. Anybody? Any other future agenda items?
I think kind of related to the whole thing, and maybe this has been done, is there an overall, how do they sort of plan for usage? I mean, what's kind of the plan as they go into where they're providing services? Does that make sense? Like, how are the agencies determining their routes and frequency?
Is that for transit?
Yeah, so if you're looking for
transit.
kind of a report out from the bus agencies, I think that's something we could definitely set up for this committee. The four bus providers in the county. I assume it was focused on bus service?
Yeah, just thinking about bus, yeah. You see how popular the free ride, the number 5 and is it number 7? There's a couple of free, yeah, and those are just like so convenient in Walnut Creek.
Okay, and then I know we already spoke about the walk and roll and 511, and that's already on the agenda, so thank you. You beat us to it. Any other items?
I won't share everything on my podcast, and I know it's late, but this past week I had Lori Wilson, who is the Assemblywoman and chair of the Transportation Committee in the State Assembly on, and she talked about bus routes improvements, and she talks a lot about aerial transit, because she has like the leading bill in the country on how to create the framework to provide safe, long-term aerial day-to-day transit around the Bay Area.
Fascinating. I want to listen to that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay, so is there anybody from the public who has joined us in this late hour?
There are no written or virtual public comments, but I had a staff comment I wanted to share with everybody. Since this is the last December meeting, I will be working on everybody's travel reimbursement for the calendar year 25. So as I go through and just make sure we have all the information and training certificates that are needed for everybody. Keep an eye out on your email if I need something for you or from you for your reimbursement, or just a DocuSign email if I have everything I need for the year.
Very good, thank you. I want to wish you all a very happy holiday, and with that, our next regular meeting is proposed for January 28th, and this meeting is adjourned at 8:41.
Thank you.